Along the banks of the Dead Sea, near the Israeli-Jordanian border, is the site of one of the greatest archaeological finds of all time.
The manuscript remained in a cave near Jericho for about 2,000 years, the oldest known Bible manuscript in the world.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. And as some fragments in private hands are exposed as forgeries,
you have people that are straight and you have people that are crooked.
Scientists and scholars race to separate the real from the fake and make the invisible visible.
For centuries, the Dead Sea Scrolls whispered secrets no human could fully understand, until Grok AI listened. From mysterious symbols that defy translation to hidden layers of text invisible to the human eye, the Dead Sea Scrolls have always been a puzzle for historians.
You can see the writing appear line after line after line.
Can we preserve this priceless legacy and save the scrolls before it's too late? Right now.
But for the first time ever, advanced artificial intelligence has been turned loose on these sacred scrolls, revealing patterns, phrases, and connections that scholars have missed for decades. Buckle up, because this journey into ancient mysteries and modern technology is going to challenge everything you think you know about our past.
Hidden in caves from millennia, the Dead Sea Scrolls.
I think it's kind of a miracle that these scrolls survive.
1,000 years older than any other Hebrew Bible. But the ravages of time and decades of mishandling threaten to destroy them.
The Dead Sea Scrolls. A quick refresher. Before we dive into what Grok AI discovered, let's set the stage with what makes the Dead Sea Scrolls so incredibly important. These aren't just any old documents gathering dust in a museum. We're talking about roughly 900 manuscripts that were hidden away in 11 different caves near Qumran, located in the West Bank near the Dead Sea. The discovery happened between 1947 and 1956, and it remains one of the most significant archaeological finds of the entire 20th century. The scrolls contain biblical texts, hymns, prayers, and community rules written primarily in Hebrew, with some portions in Aramaic and Greek. What makes them extraordinary is their age. These documents date back to somewhere between the 3rd century BCE and the 1st century CE, making them the oldest known surviving copies of biblical texts. That's right, we're talking about manuscripts that are over 2,000 years old, preserved by the dry desert climate in clay jars. Among the scrolls, researchers found portions of every book in the Hebrew Bible except for the Book of Esther. That's huge, because it allows scholars to compare these ancient versions with later copies to see how the texts changed over time. The scrolls also included previously unknown psalms, apocalyptic texts, and writings that shed light on Jewish life and thought during the Second Temple period. The community that likely wrote and preserved these scrolls is believed to be the Essenes, a Jewish sect that lived an ascetic lifestyle in the desert. They were waiting for the end times, practicing ritual purity, and maintaining strict religious observance. The scrolls give us a window into their beliefs, their daily routines, and their interpretations of Scripture that we simply never had access to before. For decades, scholars have been painstakingly translating, analyzing, and debating the meanings hidden within these fragile fragments. The work has been slow, meticulous, and often frustrating. Many pieces are damaged, texts are incomplete, and the handwriting varies across different scribes. Traditional analysis methods involved magnifying glasses, careful photography, and countless hours of human interpretation. But now, artificial intelligence has entered the scene with capabilities that make this centuries-old mystery suddenly feel like it might actually be solvable. Enter Grok AI, the game changer. So what exactly is Grok AI, and why should we care that it's analyzing ancient scrolls? Grok is the artificial intelligence system developed by xAI, Elon Musk's AI company, and it's designed to process massive amounts of information with a level of speed and pattern recognition that frankly makes human brains look like they're running on dial-up internet. This isn't just another chatbot. Grok has access to real-time information and can analyze complex data sets in ways that were pure science fiction just a few years ago. The interesting thing about applying AI to historical documents is that machines can spot patterns humans might miss completely. Our brains are amazing, but they get tired. They have biases, and they can only process so much information at once. Grok AI doesn't have these limitations. It can compare thousands of text fragments simultaneously, identify writing patterns across different scrolls, and even make educated guesses about missing words based on context and linguistic patterns from the period. When researchers first started feeding the Dead Sea Scrolls data into advanced AI systems, the goal was relatively modest. They hoped the technology might help with translation speed, perhaps identify which fragments belong together, or maybe clarify some disputed readings where the ink had faded beyond clear human recognition. What nobody expected was for the AI to start uncovering connections and patterns that had gone completely unnoticed for 75 years of human study. Grok's approach to the scrolls involves multiple layers of analysis. First, it processes high-resolution images of the fragments, using computer vision to enhance faded text and identify writing patterns. Then, it applies natural language processing, trained on ancient Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek to understand the linguistic context. Finally, it cross-references everything against known historical documents, biblical texts, and archaeological findings from the period. The result is a comprehensive analysis that would take human scholars multiple lifetimes to complete. The collaboration between technology and traditional scholarship has created something remarkable. Historians and religious experts are now working alongside AI systems, with each bringing their unique strengths to the table. Humans provide context, cultural understanding, and interpretive wisdom, while AI brings processing power, pattern recognition, and the ability to consider countless possibilities simultaneously. Together, they're unlocking secrets that have been sealed away for millennia. And what they're finding is absolutely revolutionizing our understanding of ancient times. The first shocking discovery: hidden connections. The first major revelation from Grok's analysis hit the academic community like a thunderbolt. The AI identified previously unknown connections between scrolls that scholars had always treated as separate, independent documents. By analyzing writing styles, vocabulary choices, and even the physical characteristics of the parchment and ink, Grok determined that certain scrolls thought to be written by different authors or communities were actually part of a larger, interconnected body of work. This discovery fundamentally changes how we understand the organization and purpose of the Qumran community. It suggests a level of coordination and structured literary activity that was far more sophisticated than previously believed. The scrolls weren't just random religious texts collected haphazardly over time. They appear to be part of a deliberate, organized library system with clear thematic connections and cross-references between different documents. One particularly fascinating example involves the Community Rule Scroll, which outlines the regulations for the Qumran sect. Grok found linguistic patterns and thematic elements that directly connected to several other scrolls that describe apocalyptic visions and prophecies. This suggests the community wasn't just following rules for the sake of purity. They believed their specific way of life was directly tied to preparing for end times events they thought were imminent. The AI also identified what appeared to be editorial marks and annotations that indicate the scrolls were actively studied and referenced by the community members. These marks show a system of cross-referencing similar to footnotes in modern academic texts. The Essenes weren't just preserving these documents. They were actively engaging with them, debating interpretations, and building a complex theological framework based on multiple interconnected texts. What makes this discovery so important is that it reveals the Dead Sea community as far more intellectually sophisticated than we gave them credit for. These weren't simple desert dwellers copying texts mechanically. They were engaged in serious scholarly activity, theological development, and literary creation. The implications for understanding Second Temple Judaism and the development of early religious thought are profound. We're looking at evidence of a vibrant intellectual tradition that may have influenced both early Christianity and Rabbinic Judaism in ways we're only beginning to understand. The calendar controversy. Time works differently. One of the most intriguing things Grok uncovered involves the calendar systems described in various scrolls. This might sound boring at first, but trust me, this discovery is absolutely wild and has massive implications for understanding ancient Jewish practices and the timing of biblical events. The AI found evidence of multiple competing calendar systems being used and debated within the scrolls, something that scholars had suspected but never fully understood the extent of until now. The mainstream Jewish calendar of the period was lunar-based, following the cycles of the moon to determine months and religious festivals. But several of the Dead Sea Scrolls describe a solar calendar with 364 days, perfectly divisible into weeks, months, and seasons. The Qumran community appears to have strongly favored this solar calendar and considered it the only legitimate way to calculate religious observances. This wasn't just a minor preference, it was a major theological dispute that separated them from the temple establishment in Jerusalem. Grok's analysis revealed detailed astronomical calculations and calendar conversion tables hidden within texts that scholars previously thought were purely religious or prophetic. The AI found mathematical patterns that show the community was tracking celestial movements with impressive precision. They were observing solstices, equinoxes, and planetary positions, incorporating this astronomical data into their religious framework. This suggests a level of scientific observation that we don't typically associate with ancient religious communities. Here's where it gets really interesting. The different calendar system means the Qumran community would have celebrated Passover, Yom Kippur, and other major festivals on completely different dates than the rest of the Jewish world. This wasn't just a scheduling inconvenience. It was a fundamental disagreement about when sacred time occurred, about when humans could properly connect with the divine. Imagine the tension this must have created with the temple authorities in Jerusalem. The implications extend even further when we consider early Christianity. Jesus and his disciples were operating in this world of competing calendars and religious practices. Some scholars have speculated for years about discrepancies in the gospel accounts of the Last Supper and crucifixion timing. Could some of these apparent contradictions actually reflect different calendar systems being used by different groups? Grok's analysis is giving us new tools to explore these questions and potentially resolve long-standing biblical puzzles that have confused readers for centuries. The Messianic expectations. Not what we thought. This next discovery might be the most controversial one yet, and it's definitely the one getting the most attention from religious communities worldwide. Grok's analysis of Messianic texts within the Dead Sea Scrolls reveals expectations and beliefs about the coming Messiah that are significantly more complex and nuanced than what most people learn in religious education. The scrolls don't describe a single messianic figure. They actually reference multiple messianic roles and expectations simultaneously. Traditional Christian teaching focuses on Jesus as the singular Messiah, while Jewish tradition generally views messianic concepts differently. But the Dead Sea Scrolls present something more complicated. The AI identified references to at least two distinct messianic figures, a priestly Messiah and a kingly Messiah, sometimes called the Messiah of Aaron and the Messiah of Israel. These two figures were expected to appear together, each fulfilling different roles in the restoration of Israel. The community rule and other texts describe these dual messiahs with specific characteristics and functions. The priestly messiah would come from the line of Aaron and would handle religious matters, temple worship, and spiritual leadership. The kingly messiah would descend from David's line and would lead militarily and politically, driving out oppressors and establishing God's kingdom on earth. This two-messiah theology was apparently central to Qumran beliefs and shaped their entire worldview and practices. Grok also found references to what some researchers are calling a prophetic messiah, or a teacher figure who would come before the others to prepare the way. The texts describe this figure as someone who would correctly interpret the law, reveal hidden truths, and guide the faithful during troubled times. Some scholars are now speculating whether this concept might have influenced New Testament descriptions of John the Baptist, or even shaped early Christian understanding of Jesus' role. What's particularly fascinating is that these messianic expectations were tied directly to specific historical events and calculations. The scrolls contain what appear to be apocalyptic timelines, attempting to predict when these messianic figures would appear based on interpretations of biblical prophecy and their observations of current events. The community believed they were living in the final generation before these prophecies would be fulfilled. This adds a whole new dimension to understanding the urgency and intensity of their religious practice and the strict purity laws they followed. The Lost Psalms, songs we've never heard. Among the most moving revelations from Grok AI's analysis is the discovery of lost psalms, songs and hymns completely unknown from the traditional Book of Psalms. These ancient compositions open a window into the devotional heart of the Qumran community, giving voice to a people who lived, prayed, and hoped 2,000 years ago. It's like unearthing a lost album of sacred music from antiquity, where every fragment of lyric feels alive with faith, struggle, and longing. Through these songs, we glimpse how ancient believers expressed emotions of fear, devotion, and transcendence in a way that feels both foreign and familiar. Grok's role in this discovery was crucial. Many of these psalm fragments were so damaged and tiny that traditional scholars could barely piece together their context. But through advanced linguistic pattern recognition, Grok identified recurring poetic rhythms, theological phrases, and stylistic signatures that allowed researchers to link scattered fragments into coherent compositions. The AI even suggested plausible reconstructions for missing lines, which scholars are now reviewing with careful distinction between what is confirmed and what is hypothesized. What's emerging is a poetic tradition rich in imagery and emotional depth, works that could redefine our understanding of ancient Jewish spirituality. The content of these lost psalms reveals a community preoccupied with light and darkness, purity, cosmic warfare, and the coming of divine justice. Their hymns pulse with apocalyptic vision, battles between angels and demons, and the triumph of truth over corruption. One especially striking psalm speaks of knowledge as a radiant light driving darkness from the human heart, and divine wisdom as living water in the desert, a powerful metaphor for a people surviving in the wilderness. Some scrolls even include performance notes, indicating when and how these psalms were to be sung during festivals or daily rituals. Through Grok's lens, we are no longer just reading about their faith. We are hearing echoes of their worship, their rhythm of life, and their unwavering hope in the divine. The Scribal signatures, who wrote what? One of Grok AI's most groundbreaking contributions to Dead Sea Scrolls research lies in its ability to identify the distinct handwriting of individual scribes. Using advanced pattern recognition, the AI analyzed microscopic variations in letter shapes, spacing, and writing pressure, the kinds of details invisible to the human eye. This digital fingerprinting allowed it to separate the work of different scribes with forensic precision, turning ancient parchment into a centuries-old crime scene where the culprits were master copyists of sacred texts rather than criminals. Traditional paleography could only make broad distinctions, recognizing style differences between manuscripts. But Grok AI pushed beyond that, mapping unique scribal habits, how certain letters curved, how spacing subtly changed between words, even how a writer's fatigue or lighting conditions might have altered their strokes. Through this data, the AI uncovered a hidden system of organization. The same Scribe A seemed to have worked on multiple scrolls across several caves, suggesting a coordinated scribal network rather than isolated individuals. This finding redefines our view of the Qumran community as a disciplined group with shared training, methods, and purpose. Even more remarkably, Grok detected edits and corrections made by entirely different hands, showing that the scrolls were not static relics but evolving documents. Texts were reviewed, refined, and sometimes rewritten over long spans of time. These layers of revision reveal a culture deeply engaged in preserving and perfecting its sacred writings. By tracing these scribal signatures, scholars can now build a timeline of literary development, seeing how ideas matured, doctrines evolved, and how one generation's interpretations literally wrote over another's, leaving a living record of faith in motion. The biblical variations, texts that differ. When Grok AI compared the biblical passages from the Dead Sea Scrolls with later traditional versions, it uncovered far more than simple copyist slips. The analysis revealed hundreds of subtle differences and several major variations. Distinct words, added lines, and alternate phrasing that actually change meaning. This wasn't mere human error. It was evidence that early scripture existed in multiple evolving forms, shaped by centuries of transmission and interpretation. Although scholars have long known that the Dead Sea texts occasionally diverge from the Masoretic text, the foundation of most modern Hebrew Bibles, Grok's deep data mapping offered something new, a complete digital catalog of every variation, showing how certain alternate readings might in fact preserve earlier, more original versions of sacred texts. The Book of Samuel, for example, contains passages in the Dead Sea Scrolls that appear in the Greek Septuagint but are missing from the Masoretic version, proving these weren't later additions but remnants of a parallel Hebrew tradition that once coexisted. The AI's analysis also revealed how scribes sometimes harmonized sections, deliberately editing words to align stories or resolve contradictions. It's a striking reminder that ancient scripture was not static. It was actively shaped by human minds seeking clarity, consistency, and coherence. For modern faith communities, this discovery isn't a threat but a revelation, showing how scripture was a living tradition, refined and transmitted through centuries of devotion, dialogue, and debate. The temple texts, a different vision. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, few writings have sparked as much fascination as the Temple Scroll, a document outlining an entirely different vision of divine worship. Far from describing the known Jerusalem temple, Grok AI's analysis revealed that this scroll presents a blueprint for an ideal temple, one dictated in God's own voice, complete with precise architectural designs, rituals, and purity laws that expand far beyond biblical prescriptions. It's not a renovation plan, it's a revelation of arrival theology. Through its analysis, Grok identified striking deviations between the Temple Scroll and biblical temple texts, pinpointing where the Qumran community broke from mainstream religious practice. Their vision reflects open rebellion, rejecting the authority of the Jerusalem priesthood, dismissing the existing calendar, and condemning what they saw as corrupt rituals. The Temple Scroll was their manifesto, outlining how true worship should be restored when divine order finally replaced earthly imperfection. Equally astonishing are the architectural details Grok uncovered, descriptions of a temple so vast that it may never have been intended for Earth at all. Some scholars believe it represents a heavenly or prophetic temple, one meant to exist in the era of divine renewal. Whatever its purpose, the Temple Scroll reveals the profound spiritual divide of the Second Temple period, exposing a world where Jewish sects competed fiercely over the meaning of purity, authority, and divine truth. Through these texts, we glimpse the ideological landscape that ultimately gave rise to both Rabbinic Judaism and early Christianity. The War Scroll, Cosmic Battle Plans. Among the Dead Sea Scrolls, the War Scroll stands out as one of the most dramatic and complex. Grok AI's analysis revealed that it isn't merely a symbolic prophecy, but a detailed war manual outlining a cosmic conflict between the Sons of Light and the Sons of Darkness. It describes strategies, weapons, and formations that mirror Roman military precision, indicating that the writers envisioned not just a spiritual struggle, but a physical one, a real war that would mark the end of days. The AI's study found that the War Scroll integrates religious rituals into military planning. Priests were assigned battle roles. Trumpets would signal different phases of combat, and specific prayers were designated for key moments. The text blends warfare and worship seamlessly, depicting a holy conflict where angels and humans fight side by side. This fusion of liturgy and strategy suggests the community viewed war as both divine ritual and earthly duty, with Jerusalem and Israel serving as the literal and symbolic battlegrounds. In its historical context, the War Scroll reflects the tensions of a people under Roman rule, longing for liberation and divine justice. The text became their manifesto, part political protest, part spiritual prophecy. Through its visions of victory, the scroll captures the community's yearning for redemption and their belief that divine power would work through human action. It stands as a striking testament to how ancient faith, fear, and resistance merged into one apocalyptic hope for deliverance. The Copper Scroll. Treasure map or something else. Unlike the other scrolls made of parchment, the Copper Scroll is literally engraved on metal, a unique artifact that reads like an ancient treasure map. It lists over 60 locations where enormous quantities of gold, silver, and sacred artifacts were supposedly buried. Grok AI's analysis reignited debate over whether these treasures were real or symbolic, suggesting that the text's purpose may be far more complex than a simple inventory of wealth. The AI detected irregularities in the Hebrew used, showing that the Copper Scroll differs linguistically from other Dead Sea documents. This points to it being written by a different group or for a special purpose, possibly coded or ceremonial. Some phrases may conceal hidden meanings or numeric ciphers, hinting that the locations were intentionally obscured. Despite numerous expeditions over decades, no treasure has ever been found, leaving the scroll suspended between myth and history. Theories abound. It could record temple riches hidden before Jerusalem's fall, or perhaps the Qumran community's own assets safeguarded from Roman plunder. Others think it's symbolic, a metaphor for spiritual treasure or divine knowledge. Whatever the truth, Grok's findings reaffirm the Copper Scroll as one of archaeology's enduring mysteries, a document that refuses to yield its secrets, yet continues to fire imaginations across generations. The Daniel Connections, Apocalyptic Mathematics. Grok AI uncovered an astonishing link between the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Book of Daniel, showing how the Qumran community used mathematical precision to interpret prophecy. They meticulously calculated the timing of the apocalypse using Daniel's cryptic numbers: 70 weeks, 1,290 days, time, times, and half a time, weaving them into an elaborate system predicting when divine judgment would arrive. These weren't random speculations. The AI found that their calculations integrated biblical texts, astronomical cycles, and historical events into a unified prophetic calendar. One text, the Pesher on Habakkuk, interprets ancient scripture as commentary on the author's present, identifying contemporary leaders and wars as direct fulfillments of prophecy. This showed that they believed they were living at the threshold of history's climax. Their obsession with apocalyptic timing explains why they withdrew into the desert, building a community of purity and discipline to await divine intervention. To them, mathematics was not a cold science. It was sacred reasoning, a way to measure the heartbeat of destiny. Grok's analysis reveals not fanaticism, but an ancient attempt to decode divine time itself, fusing faith, astronomy, and theology into one extraordinary worldview. The Women Question: Hidden Female Voices. For decades, scholars assumed the Dead Sea community was entirely male. Yet Grok AI's deep linguistic search is reshaping that view, uncovering subtle traces of female presence embedded within the texts. Certain grammatical patterns and community rules hint at families or married members, while archaeological discoveries, including female remains and artifacts associated with domestic life, suggest a more complex social structure than once believed. The AI even identified fragmentary references to women in religious contexts, mentions of wives, prophets, and purity regulations specific to women. These details, though brief and often damaged, suggest that women likely participated in community life, even if official writings minimize their roles. Grok's findings point toward the familiar historical pattern where women's contributions were real but under-recorded. This revelation carries deep significance beyond Qumran. It challenges long-held assumptions about gender exclusion in ancient Judaism and early Christianity. Through AI-assisted analysis, we begin to see how women's lives, rituals, and voices were woven into the background of these sacred texts, not erased, merely waiting to be read again with fresh eyes and better tools. The Linguistic Puzzles: Ancient Hebrew Secrets. Through Grok's linguistic modeling, scholars have gained a clearer picture of Hebrew as it evolved across centuries. The Dead Sea Scrolls capture the transition from classical biblical Hebrew to later dialects, revealing how language adapted during turbulent times. Variations in spelling, grammar, and word choice point to multiple scribes, time periods, and purposes behind the scroll's creation. One of the AI's most useful contributions lies in reconstructing damaged or missing text. By comparing linguistic structures, Grok can often infer the likely words or meanings lost to time. This has already proven valuable for reinterpreting previously illegible fragments and linking them with related texts. The findings even refine our understanding of biblical Hebrew, providing a bridge between scripture and the living language of its era. Grok also detected influences from Aramaic and Greek, showing that the community operated in a linguistically diverse environment. Hebrew was not static. It absorbed foreign words, idioms, and names, mirroring cultural exchange under imperial rule. Through this analysis, the Dead Sea Scrolls become more than sacred relics. They become linguistic fossils, preserving the evolution of one of the world's most enduring languages. The preservation. Mystery: how did they survive? Grok's material and environmental analysis has shed light on one of the greatest puzzles surrounding the Dead Sea Scrolls: how these fragile manuscripts managed to survive for over 2,000 years. The AI found that the unique microclimate of the desert caves played a critical role. Low humidity, stable temperatures, and isolation from sunlight created near-perfect preservation conditions rarely found elsewhere. By mapping damage patterns and residue analysis, Grok reconstructed how the scrolls were stored. Many inside clay jars or wrapped in linen. Jars provided the best protection, though some damage still occurred where air seeped in. The AI's insights have become crucial for modern conservation, helping experts replicate similar conditions to preserve surviving fragments. Beyond environmental factors, Grok helped re-examine the debate over why the scrolls were hidden. Its spatial modeling suggests a systematic placement within the caves, consistent with intentional storage during times of crisis. Whether the scrolls were hidden from Roman soldiers or merely archived by a reclusive sect, their survival tells a remarkable story, not of chance, but of careful human effort combined with the desert's quiet mercy. The authentication debates: real or fake? In recent years, Grok AI has become a powerful weapon against forgery in the world of biblical archaeology. Not every fragment sold or displayed as a Dead Sea artifact is genuine, and AI is changing how authenticity is verified. Grok examines writing style, linguistic structures, parchment composition, and aging patterns to distinguish true ancient scrolls from modern fakes. A notable case involved fragments purchased by the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., which turned out to be modern forgeries written on ancient parchment. Grok's analysis exposed subtle inconsistencies in ink chemistry and writing pressure that the human eye could not detect. This new era of digital forensics is transforming authentication into a precise science rather than a matter of expert opinion. The implications reach far beyond fraud detection. Every confirmed forgery helps refine our understanding of what makes authentic scrolls unique, sharpening criteria for future discoveries. By bringing objectivity to a field once clouded by speculation, Grok isn't just protecting history. It's redefining how we determine what history truly is. What Grok AI has done with the Dead Sea Scrolls isn't just technological progress, it's a revival of history. After centuries of silence, these ancient manuscripts are speaking again through artificial intelligence. Each rediscovered psalm and scribal trace reminds us that faith and knowledge are alive, still evolving. This isn't the end of the Dead Sea Scrolls story. It's a new beginning where human curiosity and AI uncover truths long buried by time. If this discovery left you speechless, stay tuned, because Grok's next revelation might just rewrite everything we thought we knew about the ancient world.